Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and these are Logitech's G Fits. These are in-ears which seemingly have RGB lighting. But don't worry, because that lighting is actually for a very specific purpose, and one that's pretty excellent I'm going to get to in a minute. Now, these are in-ear headphones that work with both Bluetooth and 2.4 gigahertz using Logitech's Lightspeed wireless connectivity. And as you've seen, there's a number of things included in the box that make these potentially interesting, including a little charging case. Now, these are potentially powerful and appealing in-ears for a number of different reasons, and I was pretty excited to try them out. So now I'm going to unbox them and give you my review of what they've been like to use and the highlights and lowlights of them, because there are some complaints and some things that are pretty fantastic about them. Now, these are pretty expensive in-ears, I'll be honest. Well over £200 and approximately the same in dollars. I'll leave links in the description so you can find out the price in your region. But what you'll find is they are not cheap. They don't have any active noise cancellation, which is worth noting, but they do have built-in microphones, and they do have the convenience of this tiny little charging case that you can obviously carry with you, pop in your pocket, and it will deliver charge to them as well when they're not in use. So very handy to have there. But the most appealing thing about them is the custom fit. So these are designed, and I'll show you the process for you in a minute, to work with any ear canals, basically customize the fit to your ears, which is pretty neat. It comes with both the option of obviously 2.4 gigahertz Lightspeed, so a really sort of solid low latency connection for gaming on PC, with a USB-C and USB-A dongle. So it's USB-A dongle, which has a USB-C adapter. So in fact, it's multi-use because obviously you could use it on console as well. And you have the USB-C charging cable for the case. And then you have a connection setup process, which essentially sees you scanning a QR code on the included card, which is in there, downloading the Logitech app on your phone, and then having control over the in-ears via your phone once it's connected in Bluetooth. This initial setup process should be fairly straightforward in theory. I did find that it took me a while and a little bit of frustration that I've cut out of here, but essentially basically have to go through the process of trying to connect them up, and it made me take the in-ears in and out of the little dock repeatedly before it worked. But once you've got it set up, it's fairly straightforward, though there are some complaints worth bearing in mind that I'll get to in a minute. But you can see they come sealed in a little packet, and there's no extra tips included, because you basically have these special tips that are designed to go into your ears and then go through a customization process, which then sees them molded to the shape of your ears. But first you need to set them up in the app. So you take them out, put them in the little charging dock, connect them to your phone, and then go through the setup process as it talks you through the next steps. And you can see basically just click on there, and then it just tells you what to do. So you've got to twist them into your ear and put them in place, and then hold them in that position while it runs through the setup process. So that lighting that you saw earlier on actually works to mold the ear tips to the shape of your ear, which then provides a better fit. And this is part of the reason why they say it doesn't include active noise cancellation. There's no ANC here, because that design is basically designed to not only keep them in your ear, but also to allow for some passive noise cancellation, blocking out a fair amount of external noise. I have actually found that works quite well. Now, when you initially twist them in, they're obviously quite chunky tips, as you've seen. So they're not the small sort of standard ones you get with a rubber basic affair. I did find that they fit quite well even as standard. They are quite large, so they do sort of sit into the ear quite well. But then you go through the setup process, and you basically have to hold them into your ear, so sort of push them into place and hold them there for a minute as it runs through this setup process. That lighting will turn on and the tips slowly heat up, and they do get quite warm, and then you basically just feeling that process happening. And you can actually see some of it here, so you'll see some of the clips. So the lighting that you saw isn't for RGB lighting as you'd normally get on a gaming headset, thank God, because that would look awful on in-ears, I think. I'm glad they've not done that, and naturally that would waste battery power over time as well. But instead it's just designed for the initial setup process, and you can run again if you need to improve the fit or change it. But what I found actually was surprising, that it actually worked really well. It's a very short setup process, just a minute of doing this, and then suddenly you've got in-ears that now have a good fit and aren't in danger of falling out. And this is my personal experience. I've read people saying elsewhere that they weren't a good fit after doing this, so it's obviously going to vary largely depending on your ears. But for me personally, they fit really well, really comfortably. I've used them sitting at the computer gaming, listening to music. I've gone out of the house wearing them, walking the dog. I've actually slept in them as well, and I found that they don't fall out. They're not easy to knock out, and they just sit in there really well and really comfortably. And that's definitely a bonus of it, because in-ears can be really hit and miss. Sometimes you have really uncomfortable ones, and then sometimes the other end. These are a really good fit. Obviously, also, you then have the flexibility to connect to your PC, so you can then use that classic Lightspeed connection for a good theoretical low latency sound when gaming, which would obviously be optimum. But then you have Bluetooth, which potentially gives you longer battery, so you can listen to music on your phone while you're out and about and make calls in theory as well with the microphones. So that's something to bear in mind. There are a number of different controls, which I'll go through in a second, which allow you to basically use gesture, so tap-based controls on the earphones to then change between settings and adjust things. So that switching between Bluetooth and wireless connectivity, for example, you have to triple tap on them. Now, I actually don't like this process, and I will note that, because what I find is that you have to do it quite hard, and that's quite obnoxious to basically hit yourself in the ear repeatedly to get it to change between these. It also can be quite finicky changing between the two settings, but you do have the convenience of docking into the little charging station, and you can see that that also has its own power, so even when it's not plugged in, it maintains some power and then charges up the in-ears when you need to. So really convenient in terms of the charging modes. Once you've got it connected to your phone, you then have controls to be able to switch between various EQ profiles. Now, I will say that I was immediately struck by the fact that this doesn't have very much bass, so these in-ears aren't great in terms of the bass delivery, which is a real shame. I think I've gone from over-ears with ANC, which had a closed back design, so block out a lot of external noise and have really good bass, to these in-ears which lack it, and that's a shame because they've got such a good fit. I was expecting them to have good sound as well, but they just don't have the bass. And for the amount of money you're paying, I think this is really lacking in the sound. But you can see that you can customize the sound, play around with the EQ, and change things. You also can customize the controls on here, so you'll see that I've got it on a single tap on the left. Ear cup will give you volume up, and then on the right hand side, volume down. You can then play and pause over Bluetooth. You can mute and unmute with the Lightspeed connection by double tapping. So you can set up double tap and single tap options on there, and then a triple tap switch between Bluetooth and 2.4 gigahertz. But it's so finicky switching between those two. It's not seamless, and it's quite frustrating at times. So if you're finding or thinking that you're going to be using these and then regularly and quickly switching between those modes, you'll be frustrated. I found that it just doesn't work very smoothly, sadly, and that's quite disappointing. It would also be really nice to have that dual connectivity, so you could be listening to 2.4 gigahertz and then also have a Bluetooth connection at the same time. I've seen this on other headphones, and indeed on Logitech products. On the Astra A30 wireless, for example, you could do that. Now, these are in-ears, so it's a bit much to ask for them to do as much as a full-blown headset, but it is a shame to see that that doesn't work. So there are some complaints about them, and that is unfortunately mostly the sound. The comfort for me is great. The battery life's fantastic. There is a lot of flexibility to what you can do with the sort of tweaks in the sound on the software, but otherwise it's lacking, unfortunately, in that bass, which really lets it down. The audio isn't too bad otherwise. You do have a good audio range, and the positional audio for gaming seems pretty good, and obviously the passive noise cancellation by that good fit blocks out a lot of the surrounding noise as well. The next frustration is actually in Windows, because you can't actually control very much from Logitech G Hub, so you can connect them obviously via 2.4 gigahertz and then have G Hub running, but then G Hub tells you need to then switch to your phone to then adjust the EQ profiles to switch between the various sound effects that you saw earlier on. So you literally can't do anything with it on PC, which seems contrary, because you think that that would be where you get the best sound. If I want to be playing games, why have I got to go onto my phone, switch into the Bluetooth mode, change the settings and switch back? It's not a great user experience at this point. That might change in the future though. Obviously software updates, firmware updates, they might fix that. But that is certainly one of my complaints with it. I did mention that they do have microphones built into them, so that you can theoretically use them for recording and obviously for voice chat purposes. It's not great, as you can hear, You will have noticed that in G Hub you can also turn side tone on. However, from what I've seen, turning side tone on, all that is doing is letting me hear the fan noise from my PC and not my own voice, which is weird. Although, to be honest, with in-ears, you can hear your own voice fairly well anyway. But then they just have passive noise cancellation. So you also, if you're playing music or playing games, you're probably going to struggle to hear yourself to some degree. But yeah, so not great earphones for using the mics, but that's not surprising because obviously they're up here. It's not a boom mic, so it's certainly not going to replace that. So the end result, unfortunately, is a very expensive pair of in-ear headphones, which are great for listening to music while out and about. Okay for playing games at your PC, not great for switching between those two audio sources, and unfortunately, probably a bit expensive. I do really like the comfort, though. I can't emphasize that enough. These sit in there really well. I just wish they had a bit more bass. If they had loads more bass, that'd be fine. That'd be great for me, but they are very expensive, and there probably are better options out there in terms of standard sort of headphones rather than gamer-centric ones, but those wouldn't have that low latency, Lightspeed wireless connection, so that's something to keep in mind if you want the best connection with wireless earphones. This is probably one to go for, but I personally would probably spend the money on the Astra A30 wireless instead because that would be a better investment.
You've made it right to the end of the video, you brilliant legend you. If you've enjoyed it, click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and drop me a comment down below if you've got any questions. If you really enjoyed it, consider joining the channel and see the benefits of doing so. Check out these other videos. You might well find them interesting or useful. And most importantly, have a great life.